Welcome again, everyone. This is Mike Abrahamson from SuranceBay, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Just a couple of logistics for today's webinar. We have muted everyone's line just to avoid any of the distractions sometimes from background noise or hold music, those kinds of things. We've got a lot to show you today because this is, as we've told everyone, the biggest change we've ever made to SureLC. And so we want to make sure that we have time to get through everything that we want to show you, but undoubtedly you will have questions. So what we're going to ask you all to do is, as we go through the demo, which will start in a few minutes, we've got a little bit of a presentation just to kind of set the stage for what we're going to show you. But once we get started in the demo, as you have questions, please post those in the chat here in Zoom. And we've got a couple of folks who are going to be monitoring those. And at times, as possible, they may chime in and interrupt the demo to ask specific questions that might be relevant at that time. Any questions that we don't get to during the demo, we will have a Q&A session toward the end where we will actually have our moderators, other folks here on the team at SuranceBay, posing questions that you all have asked that they've collected, and then we'll kind of go through those in rapid fire toward the end of today's webinar. And then any questions, if we run out of time, any questions we didn't get to, we'll make sure that the chat transcript gets shared with all of you who attended today's webinar, and we'll send a follow-up with both a link to the recording for this webinar, which, as you know, we're recording this one, as well as the chat transcript with all of the questions that you've asked with answers, as best as we can answer them, given whatever the topic is. So please post your questions in the chat, like I said, and just kind of let's have everyone stay muted just so we can avoid 300 people trying to chime in at the same time. So we appreciate your patience and your cooperation, and let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here in just a second. Okay, so SureLC.com is what we're now calling the web-based version of SureLC for all of you agency folks who have been using SureLC and the desktop software since its inception. Your producers have actually been using a web-based version exclusively for just about 2 years now. And so now we're finally ready to unveil and release the web-based version of SureLC for agencies. And so that we're calling SureLC.com because as of Monday, all of you, instead of opening the desktop software to log into SureLC, will now go to SureLC.com, and there will be a link there for you to log in to SureLC as an agency user. So that's a big change for us. And I just want to focus on some highlights for what this upgrade means. As I mentioned, it's fully web-based. So you just go to a web browser and you log in. There is no more software to install. You can buy to Adobe Air and Adobe Acrobat and any of those other programs that we were formerly dependent on. And then it also allows us to add lots of new features. And so we're going to cover these as we go through the demo, but I just want to highlight a few of them quickly. Fast Lane is a brand new feature that we've added that allows you as the agency to create multiple contracting requests at once. And we'll show you there's a couple of different ways that can happen. We'll show you that. We also have a new feature called Carrier Rules, which for those of you who need to be able to enforce specific DBA types by carrier, product type, and affiliation, you'll be able to do that. And what that will mean is that you will not nearly as often have to go back into a producer profile and change their DBA type back and forth if, for instance, all of the annuities that you write under one particular carrier for one specific affiliation need to be set as solicitors for your agency. That's just one example. You can define that as a rule so that any request for that producer automatically gets that DBA type of solicitor, regardless of what's in their profile. So that hopefully will help a lot of you. We've also added a quick export to Excel option on the producer list and on the contracting request list. So we still have the same web reports that have always been available. Those are not going away. They're still available. But we've added this additional quick export option so that way, if you just have a quick filtered list of producers in the producer list, you can quickly export that to Excel and manipulate it and do whatever you need to do. We've also added a dashboard, and we'll show you that as well. And that's where you'll be able to see key performance metrics, or KPIs, if you will, that matter to your agency. And so we're actually we'll show this as sort of a proof of concept and as what we've built out initially with a few metrics, but we really want to get some feedback from all of you as to what those KPIs need to be the most relevant for you. So we'll talk more about that. And then we've added a whole bunch of performance improvements just to streamline the whole experience and make the software work a little bit better. Okay, and just a reminder, if everyone could make sure that they stay on mute, that would be helpful. A few things to note. Because we're now in a web-based platform, there are some changes that we've had to make in order to make sure that everything works as well as possible. And the first one that we want to make sure that everyone is aware of is that you will no longer be able to manually edit PDF files during the processing step. One of the things that being built on Adobe Air and having that Adobe Acrobat or Reader integration allowed was for you to edit PDFs directly in SureLC. Now that we've moved to a web-based platform, there's a couple of reasons why that can no longer be done. One is that we don't have the Acrobat integration built in, but the other is we actually needed to improve the compliance and eliminate some issues that doing those manual edits caused when the files actually made it to the carriers. So obviously when a producer signs the contract request, any changes made after that signature gets applied potentially invalidate that e-signature. And so that causes a compliance issue. And also it created conflicts for the carriers where we send them data and images. They would end up having data that didn't match what the PDFs had because the PDFs had been modified. So just to clean all that up and improve the compliance of the requests that are being submitted to the carriers, we had to remove the ability to make manual edits to PDF files. However, what we've done is we've tried to find every instance where we knew that people were needing to manually edit PDFs because maybe there wasn't an easy way to populate the data in SureLC before you got to the PDF, such as the Lincoln Comp Builder form. We know a lot of you who work with Lincoln, that building that comp builder is a challenge sometimes. It's a very complicated form. We've actually made it very easy to populate that in SureLC, so you don't have to manually edit the PDF, and we'll show you that during the demo as well. Another thing to note is that previously you could just upload any training certificate to a producer profile in the Scan tab, and we would just include all of those when we submitted that request to the carriers. Going forward, every training certificate must be linked to a specific training course. So if you upload a training certificate to the documents screen for the producer, it's going to show a yellow warning saying this document is not linked. And if it's not linked, then it won't be included with the packet. So you'll have to just link those. And the best place to do that is to actually upload the document in the training screen itself, where you have the actual categories. That way it will automatically link those documents to a specific training course. But if you upload it on the Documents tab, just know that you're going to have to enter the training course information in order to resolve that error. And you may have some existing training certificates in the producer's profile that aren't linked. Once you start using the new version, you'll have to just link those by adding the training course information for those. Another change is that previously, SureLC, every time you would process a contracting request, would automatically save a copy of all the contracting files, either to your local hard drive and your computer, or to a network drive that you would have configured in your agency's storage settings in SureLC. Since we're now moving to a web-based platform, we are no longer able to automatically save documents to your local machine. That's a security risk that web browsers do not allow. So you'll still be able to save the files, but you'll have to do it manually. So that will be just something to be aware of, that if you're used to relying on SureLC to automatically save those files for you, that autosave will no longer exist in the web version. You'll just have to manually save them. And the last thing we wanted to mention, just so everyone's aware, is that if your agency has not been using the auto replenishment for your transaction balance previously, meaning you had to go into SureLC and purchase transaction funds manually each time you ran out of funds, we've actually eliminated the manual step, and we're now turning on auto replenishment for everyone. And that's just, again, to eliminate these situations where you can't work, can't do anything because you don't have any funds, and maybe the person who has access to that isn't available. We just wanted to eliminate those kinds of gaps. Okay, so those are the things to be aware of, things to know. And so we want to talk a little bit about what the launch plan is, just so that everyone's aware. As of Monday, when you come in and you want to log into SureLC, you're going to go to SureLC.com instead of opening the desktop software. If you try to log in with the desktop software starting on Monday, you're going to get an error that says you have to log in at SureLC.com. The desktop software will no longer be available as of Monday. We'll have it behind the scenes just in an emergency if we need to revert anyone back, if there's a blocker or some major problem with the new version. But we've actually had about 10 agencies that have been using the new version in SureLC.com for about a month, 4 to 6 weeks. And they've been able to work and do everything they need to do. They've given us a lot of really valuable feedback, so we're grateful to them for doing that. And it's, there's still some items that we're putting the finishing touches on in the software this week, but we're pretty confident at this point that everything's ready, and you'll all be able to work seamlessly starting on Monday. And another important thing is that all of your existing logins, your accounts, your passwords will all work the same. So there's no differences for any of your agency admins or if you have sub-agency admins, all the same emails and passwords will work. But all of you will need to go to SureLC.com to log in, including all of your sub-agency administrators. So if you've got any of those affiliations that have people logging in, you want to make sure that you communicate to them that starting on Monday, go to SureLC.com to log in. Also being retained, all of your data, all of your producers, all of your contracting requests, all of your agency settings, your carrier settings, your schedules, all those kinds of things that you've already created in SureLC in the desktop version will all be retained. We're not changing anything in the database. We're just changing the front-end user interface that you use to access all of your information in SureLC. So you should be able to see everything that you already have once you log into the web-based version. Okay. And so, as I mentioned earlier, if you've got questions during the webinar, please post them in the Zoom chat. And if you have questions after the webinar that maybe you didn't think to ask in the chat and you want to follow up with us, please email support@SuranceBay.com. That's the best place to get information. Our whole team is monitoring that to make sure that we get you the information that you need as quickly as possible. Okay. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our demo. This is now the login that you will have as agency workers into SureLC. So when you go to SureLC.com on Monday, you'll see a different page than this, but on that page will be a link to this page. And then when I log in, this is our new interface. And the first place we're going to take you is the place where most agencies have told us they begin their work in SureLC, and that's the producer list. So if I go over here and I show you the menu, you see that's the first place we go. And we've made some improvements here. We've added on the first column here where we're showing the producer name, we've added what the DBA type is for that producer in their profile. So you can see this one is set up as a solicitor and who they're soliciting for. And then if they're an institution, we show that. If they're a business entity, we show you the firm name and that they're a business entity. And if there's an issue, right, solicitor for not defined. And here's, again, another way of identifying that. In this notifications column, we're showing you what issues need to be addressed. And if it's red, that's a blocker. If it's yellow, it's just kind of a warning. And if it's green, that's good. Then we've also added some additional information. So on this screen, we're showing you the NPN and the last four of the social. And we make it easy to copy those by just giving you this little button here to click on it, and it copies it to the clipboard. So you don't have to try to, highlight it. We just give you that button. It's really quick and easy. And as I mentioned, these notifications, any one of these will, if you hover over it, will tell you what the issue is. CRD number is missing, license expired in a few states, various things. And if I click on any one of these, it'll take me into that specific screen in the producer profile. Now you'll notice when I clicked on that, it opened up a new browser tab. That is something to pay attention to, because anytime you open a producer profile or a contracting request, it's likely going to open a new browser tab. The reason for that is we know that several of you, when you're working in SureLC, may get a phone call, you get an interruption, you need to kind of pause what you're working on and then start looking at something else. But we didn't want you to have to back out of the screens that you were in and have to go back through and get back to them. So we open up a new browser tab so I can work on this, and then I get interrupted. Oh, wait a minute, let me go back to my producer list. And now I need to go back in somewhere else and open up a different producer, which I can do here. And that opens up a new tab. Now I've got both of them. I can easily switch back and forth between them. But if you're not careful, obviously, over time, I might from here go back to the work inbox, and now I've got 3 tabs open. So you just want to be aware of that so that you don't end up with 200 browser tabs open throughout the day. And then a few other things on the producer list here. So the same buttons exist to copy the phone number, the email address. Here you can see the affiliations. And again, you can always filter by the affiliations. And then you can filter by status of the producers. And then we've added the added on field here. So that way you can quickly see when that producer was added to your agency. And then we've got the actions menu over here on the far right, these 3 little dots. This is where you can change the affiliation, for instance. You can archive a producer. You can jump quickly into their contracting requests. You can send them the password reset email if they can't remember their password, they need to reset it. So you can do all those things from this actions menu. And then I mentioned we've added that quick export to Excel. Here's that button right here. So if I just hit export, whatever I'm seeing on the screen is going to be exported to Excel right there. So I don't have to go into web reports. I just click on that button, and whatever I see in the list gets exported. And that includes if I apply a filter. So let's say that I want to see all producers that have an incomplete profile, for instance. Well, I only have 3 here. If I want to export that, then it's nice and quick. And there it is. So that will cover a number of situations where you had to go into web reports and find different reports for different things. Now you can apply the filters here and just do a quick export. All right, and then I can just go back to all producers here. And there's a few other options here. I have the ability, if I want, to set up the columns that I'm viewing. So if I don't want to see the added on field or the upline, this is a custom field that we have that some of you use. If I don't want to see the email for whatever reason, then I can do that. And then I can save that. I can save that layout so I can come back to it. I can have multiple layouts that I have access to. And then here's the other ones that I've set up. So I can quickly just go back to those.
Hi, Mike, this is Jim. Can you show everyone how to view the full Social Security number?
Absolutely. That's a great question because that's exactly where I was going next. So good segue. So now I'm going to actually go back into this producer profile. And so there's my new browser tab. And this is now something that we've made much more obvious. You've got a little I button here. If I just click that, now I can see the full social. And we've also made it a little bit easier to see the synchronize with Nipper button. In the past, sometimes, if a producer got married and had a name change, we kind of hid this behind the little question mark button in the desktop version. Now we just put it right here. So that way, if you need to do a quick update, you can do that. So let's kind of go through this profile. You'll notice that now we've got the tabs across the top, and most of them will look familiar, the DBA. The screens will obviously look different than what's in the desktop version, but the nice thing is these now match what your producers see. So it'll be much easier to support them when they call in and they ask, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Now you'll be able to see the same layout that they're seeing. And then we've got the questions, the background questions, licenses. And now we've added a separate screen just for FINRA. We've taken that off of the training screen because there's a lot of information here when the producer actually is a registered rep. And we'll show all that information here. Then we've got a new layout for the contracts screen. We just make that a little bit more intuitive so that if I have multiple contracts with a carrier, or I want to see what the state appointments are, now I can see by carrier. It's a little bit easier to associate the state appointments that I have, which pull in from Nipper, as well as from any contracting requests that you've submitted. Now you can quickly see those. It's a little bit easier. And you can add new contracts like I accidentally did here. And we have a new checkbox for just in time, so you don't have to put the agent number in. So that's something a lot of people have been asking for, and now you have it. And then the history tab, again, just employment and address history, a different layout for that. And then the training screen, this is the improved layout that your producers have seen now for a while. I think this just works a lot better than it does in the desktop version. And you've now got the two separate tabs, one for certifications, which hopefully all of you are aware of the training concierge that allows your producers to enter their login credentials or save their login credentials for any of these training providers they may have used. And we'll use that to import their training course history. And then those training courses get stored on this course history tab, just so you can see all the data. But the certifications tab is where we'll actually apply the various training rules to the producer profile to see which of these training rules have they satisfied and which ones have they not. So you can see AML, I've satisfied that, but I haven't satisfied best interest in these 3 states. That's why they're red, and I can click each one of them. So this is just an improved layout compared to what was in the desktop version that you've all had for a while. Then we have the E&O screen. Again, I won't spend a lot of time on these because these are things that have existed before. But the signature tab, now we've dedicated a page just to that. So you can see the signature authorization form and the signature image rather than having to go to the scan tab to see it. And speaking of the scan tab, we've changed that to documents. And we've added thumbnail previews for every document. So it's much easier to see what documents you have, especially where you might have multiple explanation documents, for instance, and you don't know which one is which. Now you can quickly see the thumbnails for each one. And then the last tab, this is where the contracting requests reside. So before you used to have a button in the top corner, it would take you into appointment requests. We've now changed the terminology. We're calling them contracting requests now because state appointments are a specific type of request. So just to clear up any confusion, we're now making this match what we call it in the producer view. So these are now contracting requests. And so here's that layout. And you can see we're actually including the DBA for that request right on the list. Because before you didn't know. There was no way to show that. Now we're showing it. And we're actually including the request ID as well. So that way, if you've got multiple requests for the same carrier, you can now, from a support standpoint, if you need to tell us what the specific ID is for troubleshooting purposes, you can see that right here.
Hello, Mike. Can you show one more thing on the contracts tab, how to add an existing contract?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I've got a new contract or an existing contract I want to add, I can add a contract record here, specify the carrier. put in the agent number, or if I don't have one, if it's just in time, I can put that in, put the start date in, specify whatever products, and the products that are available for the carrier will be the ones that are listed here. Now, we have this section down here called hierarchy. This is beta because this is still a work in progress. If I expand this, you'll see there's information I can put in here for hierarchy and commission. So if you want to keep track of that, you can. It's not required. And like I said, it's still in beta. That we'll probably be expanding that over time, but that's just kind of a sneak preview. And then you just hit add contract. And I think you just have to refresh. And here's that banner request or the contract that I just entered. And you'll see here, I can't download the paperwork because this was not a contracting request that I processed through the system. But if I had one, let me see if I have any of those. I think all these are manually added. Oh wait, here's one. Here's one that I processed through the software. This is where I can download the contracting files. Okay, yeah, good question. All right, so let me go into contracting requests, and I'm going to go ahead and just create a new one and just kind of take you through this. And since banner is usually a pretty simple one to show, I'm going to show what it looks like when you add banner. And so if you have an existing pending request for that carrier for this producer, we'll show you that. And this is where you can decide, oh, wait, yeah, I don't want to create a new one because that would be a duplicate. This is the one that I created, a few days ago. I want to go ahead and just proceed with that one. So hopefully that helps to eliminate any duplicates that might get created unintentionally. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and create a new one. And then as we go through these steps, you'll see it starts to fill the steps out once I give it more information. Of course, when you're in Florida, as a non-resident, you have to specify the county you're actually physically going to visit, or if you're not going to visit, no personal sales, it's telemarketing or online only. And now this is one of the changes that we've made across the board. The hierarchy and commission step has been moved up in the process. And the reason for that is, in many cases, carriers will have either optional transmittal forms or other changes to the questions based on what you put in for the hierarchy and commissions. And previously, you'd get to the hierarchy and commission step. That would be the second to last step before you viewed the documents in the packet. And then you'd add things or make changes to the hierarchy or add those optional transmittals or agreements in some cases. And you'd have to go backwards to send the review request to make sure that all of those questions got answered by the producer. But if you forgot to do that, you'd send the review request from before you even got to that step, and it wouldn't include all the questions. And then so you'd add things later, and you'd have to send the review request back out to the producer because they didn't get to answer all the questions. So we moved this up to eliminate some of that back and forth and those missed questions. And the nice thing about putting it here is it allows us, when the carrier has those optional documents, to give you the ability to select them. Now, Banner's not one that has that. Banner's pretty straightforward here. But some carriers do have those optional forms, and you'll be able to see them and select them on this screen.
Hi, Mike. This is Jim. Another question about existing templates.
Yes. So any of your existing schedules that you've created in SureLC for all of your carriers will be retained. So you can see those are all listed here. So if I select one, it just changes, pulls from my schedules, just like it always has. Good question. Okay. So moving on, of course, the training step is a part of this. And now because we know the carrier, the product, and the state, now we can apply those specific training rules. We know that in this case, we don't need to track AML or annuity or LTC or best interest because this is just a fixed life request. So this is contextual now. It only shows you what you need to know. And then the E&O step just verifies that it satisfies whatever rules might exist for the carrier. And then here's an example of a situation where Banner has some optional documents. And previously, you couldn't select these until you got to the very last step of the process, after you likely would have sent the review request. Well, now on the carrier question step, we'll show you the optional documents, because those will potentially change the questions that need to be answered. So if I select this, for instance, now it's updating and it's asking me the questions that need to be populated. And I can even add which one of these applications do I need. Let's just say it's the BK10. Okay, now it's going to update, and it's added the questions that need to be filled out here, right? So those are agency questions that you need to answer. And then there are producer questions as well. So it hopefully will resolve a lot of those back and forth situations where the producer didn't answer everything because you didn't have the ability to specify these things ahead of time. And then you'd send out your review request. Producer would complete their part and would come back to you, and you'd be good to go. I'm going to go ahead and answer these as if I am the producer, just so I can continue. And then many of you, I think, are aware of the fact that from the 19 generic background questions in the profile, we are only showing the ones that relate to this specific carrier's contracting forms on this step. And of those 19, for Banner, 16 of them actually apply. So this has to be reconfirmed by the producer on every request. And then we get to our last step. And this is where you can preview individual documents or preview all of them. Set your paperwork date, decide who the recipient's going to be, set your signatures, all the same things you can do on the desktop today. But we've also added this little tag here that tells you which documents require the producer's signature. Now, one thing that's missing on this particular screen at the moment is the ability to deselect documents. We are working on adding that because you can do that today in the desktop version. We want to make sure you can continue to do that. That's not ready for this demo. Hopefully that will be ready by Monday. We're really pushing to get that out. But worst case scenario, it'll be done very, very quickly after that launch. So hopefully it won't cause any major inconvenience for you. But it should hopefully be done by Monday, like I said. Okay.
Hey, Mike, Jim
Yes.
again. One quick question was about where you add the bank info within the producer profile. I think this agent setup is license only, right?
Oh, yes. Yep, exactly. Yep. So if I go back to my DBA screen, you'll notice I'm set up as a licensed only agent. So that's why you're not seeing the EFT screen here. If I switch that over to individual, there's the EFT screen. So yeah, excellent catch. Good question. Okay. So that's the producer profile. Again, just really updated the screens, added a couple of dedicated screens for some things, and put the contracting requests there, and went through a contracting request process, talked about the changes to that process, and we kind of rearranged some of the steps, made it hopefully a little bit more linear, and reduced some of those missing question issues that crop up here and there. So let's jump over. I'm going to close this producer profile, and I'm going to jump into the work inbox. And when I leave this screen, because I made changes to my layout, the system recognizes that and says, hey, do you want to save that? I'm just going to close it because no, I don't need to save the changes I made. So just be aware of that. If you get that, it's just the system saying, hey, we noticed you made a change to your layout. You want to save it. Okay, so here's the work inbox. And again, I mentioned anytime we're showing the list of requests, we're including the DBA type for them now. And of course, you've got your usual carrier, the request type, the stage that it's in, the state's products affiliation, when it was last updated. And we're also including who created the request. Your agency can see this, but your producers can't, because sometimes it might be someone internal to you, or maybe you've got a third party that's helping you administer these things and creating these requests. And for privacy reasons, we didn't want to expose that to your producers. But for your agency, you can see that. And then you've got your actions menu over here, so you can change the stage, you can mark it completed, you can open it up, you can open the profile, and there's a new feature here called Assign. This allows you to assign individual requests to specific admins in your agency. So this, you can help manage the workflow or the workload here. And then you've got a new filter up here that allows you to just see the requests assigned to individual people. And you can see anyone. So we're not limiting this, right? I can select multiple people here if I want. We're not limiting your selections here. Everyone can see everyone else. It's just, again, a way to help you manage that and assign those out. So that way, if you want to filter it, you can.
Hi, Mike. This is Jim again. So we've had a few questions about and concerns about not being able to edit the PDF for the transmittals. So can you show an example of what you would do instead?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually going to go into, this is a, you know what? I'm just going to create a new request and I'll show you. Actually, from the work inbox, I can create a new request. I don't have to go into the producer profile to do it. I can do it right from here. Just specify the producer and away we go. So that's a new feature as well. So I want to show one that I mentioned earlier, which is Lincoln. So I'm just going to create this new contract request for Lincoln, because Lincoln's one of those situations where we know, because we've actually been tracking this. We know that a lot of you are manually editing the PDFs, specifically the comp builder forms, because they're a beast, and we get that. So I'm going to go ahead and pick some products here, and I'll pick some states. And of course, through Florida. And now the hierarchy and commission screen for Lincoln is very unique to them because of this comp builder. So we have built this compensation grid view to try to match what the comp builder looks like as closely as possible. I think it looks pretty close. But one of the additional features is in SureLC today, in the desktop version, all these fields existed, but they're just in a huge list under the commissions area of the schedule settings for Lincoln. So it's really kind of impossible to populate, partially because there's so much there. You can't filter out the noise from what you really need, right? You can't define which products you're actually working with to eliminate all the fields you don't care about. Well, we've changed that. For Lincoln specifically, you have the ability to define which products you want to have appear in your schedule settings. So that way, and this is being defined by my schedule. I'm in a request right now, and there's only 6 that I've enabled in my schedule. So that's all I'm seeing here is just these 6. And that's all I have to fill out because that's what I've specified in my schedule. But I could go into enabling more products if this is going to take me into my actual schedule. And so I can go through and I can say, you know what? No, I actually want these. I don't want life elements. I don't want the UL. So that changes the options that are visible here. And again, it's just a way of streamlining the data that you, or the fields that you see, so you can enter the data that matters to you and ignore all the other stuff, because there's a lot to it. But let's just kind of stick with those 6 products. And you're able to put in the totals in your schedule, and then you can adjust the numbers here. But the system is smart enough to know that if you enter values that are greater than what the total specifies in your schedule, it's going to tell you there's a problem. You have to resolve that. So you want to set up your totals in your schedules, and that way, when you get into the individual requests, and you can certainly set these up in schedules too, right? So the schedules all exist. You can set this up, all these numbers up in various schedules, just like you can today. This is just an advanced layout for Lincoln specifically because the comp builder is very complex. So I know that there may be other examples. This is the one that we know of the most. Like I said, we've been tracking this. There are going to be other transmittals where you may have previously done manual editing of the PDFs. If you're unable to enter any of this data into the schedules or the requests themselves on this step, let us know. And we'll help you with that. We'll figure out a solution for that. But we've spent a lot of time going through and analyzing, and we think we've covered all the situations where you'd be making manual PDF edits, and you should be able to enter all that data right in SureLC rather than having to change the PDFs themselves.
Mike, can you preview this filled out form?
Excellent question. Yes. So once I have put all my data in commissions hierarchy settings up here, at the bottom of the screen, here are the transmittal documents, and I would just click on this preview button, and it's going to show me exactly what the form will look like before I even move on to the next step. So I don't have to wait to get to the end. I can preview this transmittal before I move on to the next step in the request process. And then I can go back if I need to make changes. I can come up here. I got to fix that. I got to put that back down to 1 because that's an error. Fix that problem. Now we got all greens. Come back here, preview it. Good to go. So that's one of the big changes we remarked on earlier is, since you can't manually edit the PDFs, you have to find ways to put the data in so it maps onto the forms that you'll need to send to the carriers. And this is the way to do that, specifically for the comp builder. Okay. Okay, so moving on. So that answers, I think, that question about editing the transmittals. You'll see similar, you won't see the same complex layout for most carriers, like I said, because this is very unique to Lincoln with their comp builder. Most of the other ones, we just have the fields like we do, for Banner, where you just listed the 5 or 6 fields that are on the in the hierarchy, and you just populate those and they map onto the forms the way they always have. This is just a little bit unique because it's more complex than most. And yes, you'll be able to change these. So if I come in here and I want to add, the associate sales manager, I can just put in test manager. If I have an existing producer record or firm record that I want to, enter in there, then I can do that, or I can just, it's not giving me the option. Here we go. I can just put that in, and then I'll be able to enter some data. And it's telling me there's no current contract for them, so it wants me to add a contract, so I can do that. So like I said, we're making some changes to this as we go, just to continue to try to improve it. But right now, because I don't have any names in here, there's nothing to fill out. So I have to actually add someone in here, add a contract for them, and then I can fill out these numbers. At least that's the way it's set up in this environment right now. So. Okay, so we've talked about the work inbox and producers. Let me jump up to the top because I want to show you the dashboard. Now, the dashboard is a great new feature that really right now is just filled with potential. And I say that because we've created 4 basic metrics that we came up with just to kind of show what the capabilities are. So, the breakdown by stage for contracting request, and if you hover over, it'll show you, kind of a breakdown here. And then, active producer resident licenses by state. It's kind of a heat map. And then agency workers, like, so how many of your admins, how many requests have they worked on and are in each stage? And then how many new contracts have been started versus new producers registered. And this is all within the last week. And so, you can change this to the last month and it'll update all of these. So just like a regular dashboard would, but we really don't know which metrics matter the most for all of you. So we really want to get your feedback. So think about this and send your suggestions to support@SuranceBay.com for the kinds of metrics, and we'll review those. And obviously the ones that get the most requests we'll work on sooner. But that's something we wanted to point out to you all. The promise of this is that once we know what those metrics are, these are going to be drillable. So for instance, if I want to click in to see these 23 records, I'd be able to click here and it would actually take me into a view that lists those 23 records. But we didn't build that out yet because we don't know the metrics. So once we know them, this will continue to improve. Okay. I'm going to jump down to a new feature that we talked about, which is fast lane. And I said that this is a way for you as an agency to create multiple contracting requests at once. And there are two kinds of scenarios where we believe that is a requirement or will be helpful. Where you have, let's say, you bring on a new producer group, and let's say there's 5 or 10 producers in it, and you want to get them all contracted with one carrier out of the gate. So we've got this one carrier to many producers. So if I click this button, this is where I select the carrier. I'm just going to say Prudential Annuities. And then I say, well, which states do I want for each of these producers to be included in the contracting requests for them? Do I just want their resident states or their resident and pre-appointment states? So obviously, multiple producers, you're going to have different lists of states where they're licensed. So that's why we don't give you the list of states here, because they may not be licensed in those states. And I haven't selected the producers yet. So then we hit next. And now this is where, if we wanted to apply the same hierarchy and commissions values for all of these producers for this carrier, we could do that here. But we don't have to. We're always, later on, when the producers complete their review requests and send these back to your agency, you'll get a chance to go back through these and add any values. Maybe they'd be different, maybe they'd be the same, but if they are the same and you want to streamline that process, you could add them here and it would apply it to all of the requests. Same thing for the carrier questions, and this particular carrier, Prudential Annuities, doesn't have any, so maybe a bad example, but those carriers that do have carrier questions, you'd have the same ability here to specify if those answers should be the same for every producer. But again, you'll be able to edit these one by one later on. This is just a quick way to create multiple requests. And so here's where you'd specify which producers you wanted to include. And if there's a producer that has an issue that disqualifies them, so here, there's no DBA information, they're missing they don't have any active resident licenses. So we're not going to allow you to specify a producer who's not eligible to get contracted. Then I hit next, and here's a summary where it's showing me I'm going to send 4 different review requests, one to each of these producers, for Prudential for these products in just their resident and pre-appointment states. We are going to be adding the ability to edit these email addresses. So those of you who are used to sending yourself the review request to then forward to the producers, you can do that. Just be advised, you're going to get 4 different emails here, and then you just have to forward each one of them. But again, this is quickly creating 4 requests with just a few clicks of the mouse rather than having to go into each individual producer and create them all one by one. The other use case is where you've got one producer you want to get contracted with many carriers. So let's say you bring on a new recruit and you want to get them contracted with, let's say, 4 or 5 carriers. This button. And you specify your producer. And then you specify the carriers. And I'm just going to go ahead and pick a few here. And then you select which products you want per carrier. And you've got a global control over here where you say, you know what, I don't want accident and sickness or dental vision or disability for any of them. And it deselects them from all those carriers. And then you hit next. And this is where, again, you'd specify whether you want just the resident states or those and their pre-appointment states. This screen is, again, one of those places we're putting some final touches on. So you won't see the DBA here. That's a separate thing, or the direct up line. Those are going away. But you'll still be able to select what states and whether or not to allow the producer to change the products for their request. So this is, again, is one producer to many carriers. That producer might not want to get a contract for annuities from one of those carriers. You could allow them to change those selections if you want, or you can just lock them all in place and say, we know better, and we're going to enforce it. Okay, so hopefully that helps. And like I said, this is still, we're putting final touches on this. So this should be ready by Monday, but if not, it'll be soon thereafter. But that's something I know that a lot of agencies have been requesting for a long time, is being able to send or at least create multiple requests at once. And this is our sort of first effort to allow you to do that.
Hi, Mike. This is Jim again. We had a few questions about whether you'll be able to select individual states.
So with regard to the first scenario, which is one carrier to many producers, I don't think we're going to be able to do that because, again, those individual producers are going to be licensed in totally different states. We might consider adding it down the road where when you select the producers, maybe we'll show the list of states. But out of the gate, this first sort of iteration of it, that's not a capability that people had been kind of pushing for initially. So we didn't include it here, but if that's something that everyone needs, then we can certainly consider adding that down the road. I think it makes more sense, certainly when you've got one producer for many carriers, because then we could just show the list of states for that producer. But then there's still some considerations, right? Not every carrier you select might be enabled in those states. So we could create some conflicts there. But that's not something we're going to enable for this sort of first version, if you will, of Fastlane. But like I said, the feedback that you all send us will determine whether or not that's something that we add sooner or later. But that's a good question. So thanks. Okay. So that's most of the stuff. There's a couple other things. Here's the web reports. This is where you can go to access the web reports. Cancel is actually something that is kind of in beta right now. I'm not going to talk about that. That's something if you're interested in learning more about, reach out and let us know, but it's not available for everybody yet. But what I want to do now is go into the agency settings because we've made some significant changes here. And we've kind of moved some things around and hopefully added some good capabilities. So if I go into agency settings, one of the things that you'll notice is instead of just having a bunch of kind of short feature names with checkboxes, now we've actually got some more descriptive features here, just more explanation of what these things do. So that way, if you change this, what the impact is going to be. And this general info screen, we've removed some things here because we've actually moved them to their own screens. So things like your principals, we've made that its own screen where you can manage those. Same thing for license notifications, where you can specify by default when your producer are going to get notified of license expirations, 1 month prior, 2 weeks prior, et cetera, et cetera. You can also choose to have your agency get notified. So this is where those settings are. And here's the email address that you can specify that will receive those license notifications. Then we've also added a dedicated screen for security. Those of you who used to use or who use single sign-on and or have been putting SureLC in an iframe within your website, you know that you have to manage those URLs. You have to enter them in your account. This is where you would do that. And then we've added a separate screen for validation rules. But you'll notice here, there's no ability to specify affiliations for these validation rules here because we've moved that, any affiliation settings, we've moved to a dedicated area to manage affiliations and their settings. So this place is where you would specify your default validation rules that you want to apply to all of your producers by default. Then we've changed the name of the add config tab to custom link. So this is where you'd see custom links for your agency. But again, on a per affiliation basis, which is what most of you use this for, that will be contained in the affiliations area. So I'm not going to spend much time on this because this doesn't get used all that much. DBA templates, again, this is where you'd create a default DBA template if you wanted it to apply to all of your producers by default. But again, most of the time, the only reason to create these is when you want to assign one to an affiliation specifically, and that again will be in the affiliations area. This new tab called training is actually where we've added the ability for your agency, if you have a corporate account with any of the training providers that we talked about or that's available in the training concierge for your producers, that we can put your agency's credentials in here that will then be used to import the training course information for all the producers that you have access to their training through that corporate account. So if you sponsor training for your producers with any of those providers, we can import all of those through your agency account rather than requiring each individual producer to put their own logins in. We don't hear from many agencies that have these kinds of corporate accounts. Some larger agencies might, but this is something that's possible. So if you're interested, let us know. Okay. And now I'm actually going to go into the affiliations area because this is a change. Some of you have been used to using what we call strict affiliations for a very long time. And that is the feature where in the desktop version, when you went to the admins tab, there would be that affiliations section on the right where you could predefine a list of affiliations that then you could pick from in your producer list to assign producers to. But some of you who have been using SureLC for a long time didn't have strict affiliations turned on. And so you'd have to, for every producer, you'd have to type in or pick from the list of existing affiliations that was not defined anywhere else. It wasn't a static list. It was something you just typed in the producer list. And sometimes you'd have typos like agency ABC with a space versus agency ABC without a space. And so you didn't have a way of looking at all of your existing affiliations or kind of managing them. What we've done is in this web version, we're turning strict affiliations on for everyone by default. So any affiliations that you have assigned to your producers are now going to show up in this list. And you'll all have access to this affiliations feature. What that gives you is the ability to customize the contact information for each of those affiliations if you want. So you'll see for this 123 affiliation, I haven't customized any of the contact information for that affiliation. It's inheriting whatever the agency settings are, right? So the main office manager name is inherited, the phone number, the email, those are all inherited from the agency settings. But you can see down here, I actually have customized the contact information for this affiliation, ABC agency. And then you have the ability to say whether you want that affiliation to inherit default validation rules or edit the settings. And this is where you can change, again, the contact information if you want. And you can also apply separate validation rules or custom validation rules to this affiliation only. Maybe I want ABC agency producers to always have E&O before they can create a request. And that's what this would enforce. This is also where I can specify which carriers are available to this affiliation. And this is where I would specify the custom link for this affiliation. So if you want producers, when they register for SureLC under your agency for the first time, if you want them to automatically be assigned to this affiliation, this would be the link that they would use. And you would just copy that. And then you send it to them or put it on your website, however you want to configure that if you're doing things online. This is also where you'd specify the DBA template for this affiliation. So if you want to enforce a rule that says every producer under this affiliation is automatically a solicitor for Rhonda Jenkins, that's where you would do that here. And then we've added this new feature called reassign, which if you've got an affiliation that's got, let's say, 20 producers, and you want to assign 5 of them to a different affiliation, you'd be able to select those 5 here and then reassign them to a different affiliation. You've always had the ability using the sync affiliations feature, again, if you had strict affiliations turned on, you could use sync affiliations, and you still can in this new version, to reassign all producers from an affiliation to a new one. This just gives you more granular control to select the specific producers you want to reassign. But you can always reassign one individual producer right from the producer list in the actions menu. that's still possible too. And this is that sync affiliations feature I mentioned where I want to assign everyone from 1, 2, 3 to ABC, and I would just say override here. Okay. So moving on, the next screen I want to show is admins. And there's a couple of things here that I love. Those of you who have a lot of admins in your account, you know how hard it was sometimes to find the one that you needed to edit or to recognize, well, how many sub-agencies do I have? Well, here, a couple of fixes for that. We can now search. So that's great. We can also filter by role. So if I just want to see my affiliate processors, there they are. We can also sort by any one of these. So I can sort by the name, sort by the email, sort by the affiliations, sort by the roles. Just makes it a lot easier to find who you're looking for. And then we've also changed how you add a new admin account. We've made this a little bit more intuitive. Once you put in the required information, we now ask you a couple of questions that help determine what capabilities this admin is going to have. The first question is, do you want them to work with all producers or only producers in one affiliation? Previously, you'd have to go and enable the sub-agency access feature separately in order to be able to do this. Now we just make it integral to this process. So if I say I want them to work with all producers, which was the default before, then the next question is, should they be able to create and edit other admin accounts? If you say yes, that means they're an agency manager. And we show you that here. We tell you the role that they're assigned. And this is a list of all the capabilities that an agency manager has, which is basically everything. If you don't want them to create or edit other admin accounts, that means they are an agency worker. And they can pretty much do everything except view and edit admin profiles. So previously, agency manager was called office manager. We've just, kind of normalized the naming scheme here. Now, separately, if I want to have this admin only work with producers from one affiliation, that is what we used to call the sub-agency access feature. It is now called affiliate access, but you don't have to enable it separately. You can just do that by creating a new user here. And then the second question, once you've specified that, is should they be able to submit contracting requests to carriers? So this used to be called the affiliate processor role. Now it's just a question you answer. If you say yes, we tell you, okay, they're being assigned the affiliate processor role, and this is what they can do. If not, and you only want them to be able to access the producers and create requests, but they can't actually process them, then they are an affiliate worker, and these are their capabilities. So there's no more guessing about, well, how do I set this person up and what rights do they have? Hopefully this all makes sense and makes it much more clear and obvious. Okay. So the next screen is carriers. And this is where you can look at the available carriers. You can add new ones if you need to. So you'd enable a new carrier. Here's all the ones that you've already selected that are available for your agency. And then let's go into protective just because. There's that pop-up if we've made recent changes to the structure. Now this is similar to what you have today. It's just laid out a little bit differently, hopefully a little bit more cleanly. You can put in an alias if you want for that carrier. You can specify whether or not you want producers to be required to get a contract or to create a contract request for this carrier first before they can add any other carriers. Some of you use that feature today. This is where we show you what the carrier contracting email address is that we have on file for them. If we don't have one, then you'll see that here. And you can also put in any custom contracting email address that you want those requests to be sent to when you send them to the carrier instead of this address. And then here's where you can download all the carrier forms, or if you want to, just preview and download one specific form. So you don't have to download all of them anymore. You have the option to do that, or just grab one of them at a time. Then you can also configure the product lines, again, just like you always could, and that's by affiliation here. Same thing with states, just define which states are available for that carrier. I'm gonna skip over rules and I'll come back to that in a minute. This is where you can, from the carrier perspective, enable or disable specific affiliations for that carrier. And then we've separated hierarchy and compensation schedules. So that way, if you've got, you no longer have to create sort of multiple schedules if, the one hierarchy, but multiple different compensation schedules need to exist. You can create the one hierarchy schedule and then set up your separate compensation schedules. You don't have to create multiples for both. But here's where you would define those. And again, the ones that you've already created should already be populated here. You'll see those. And then to populate them, again, you pull up a list here, and if it doesn't find an existing one, you can just use that in the hierarchy and it just applies that. Same thing for compensation. And then here's your schedules for that. Again, all saved. Now let me go back to rules because this is a new feature. So some of you have contracts with carriers, maybe for a specific product line, where all the producers you contract for that product line for that carrier need to be, let's say, solicitors to your agency, regardless of how they get contracted with other carriers and other lines of business. Previously, you'd have to go into those producers' profiles and change their DBA types one by one. And if those producers submitted a request to your agency, they wouldn't necessarily know what the rule was that they were supposed to be a solicitor for that product for that carrier. So you'd have to get the request, go back in, change their profile, DBA, then resend them the request back out to them, or the review request, so they can complete, the correct questions. It was kind of a mess. This should solve that problem because you can predefine a rule. I'm just going to type in some text here, where you say for fixed annuity only, for these affiliations, let's just say it's just this one affiliation, I want all of those requests to be LOA to, let's just say, Stephen Varga. So what that means, and let me just see, I think, yeah, this is still a buggy thing that we're working on for this particular page. There we go. What this means is every request from producers in this affiliation for protective fixed annuity will be set as an LOA to Stephen Vargo. And you can put additional comments in here if you want. And then it saves the rule, which again, we're fixing that bug right now. It's my demo environment. It's not ready yet. But that's what that rule would enforce. And again, it prevents you from having to go in and make changes or corrections if producers submitted under the wrong DBA type, or you didn't remember to change it in their profile before you did this, or before you created the request.
Hey, Mike, this is Jim. We had a question about what are the different methods of setting up the rules? We have carrier and affiliation, but there's some questions about if you could create that for a specific agent.
So we don't have it all the way down to a specific agent level. We haven't heard of a rule where a carrier says only for this agent, because then if you did that, you just go into that one agent's profile and change their DBA. So you can still do that if you need to, right? If you only have one producer, you need to get contracted, you just go into their profile the way you always have, set their DBA type accordingly, and create the new request for them. The rules are intended to apply to every producer for a specific affiliation or affiliations. It could be, it could be maybe 3 or 4 of them for specific products. And again, it can be more than one. And then you define what the DBA type should be. for them. But I hope that, I don't know if that answered the question, but that's the way I understood it.
Just to elaborate on that, everybody, basically you can create the role for the carrier or by affiliation. This is just an additional option you have to easily create an override for the carrier.
Yeah, previously the only way you could control or enforce a DBA type, if your producers were accessing their own profiles, they could set their DBA type and they could submit requests, and you wouldn't have any control over that. You'd have to go in and change it if they got it wrong. But also, if you had scenarios where, let's say John Smith is one of your producers and he typically gets contracted as an individual with most carriers for most lines of business, but again, let's say you have a scenario where for Protective or any other carrier, specifically for annuities, all those requests need to be LOAs. You'd have to go into that individual producer's profile and change his LOA, and maybe do that for 4 or 5 other producers too. And if you forgot to do that, then there would be a lot of cleanup to do after the fact. This allows that rule to be set up ahead of time so that there's no reason to go into their profiles individually and change the DBA type. This rule will enforce that for you. It's not applicable to every scenario or every agency. It's just for those agencies who have these kinds of special arrangements with carriers based on your contracting. Now you have the power to control that. Okay. So one thing I want to mention before we get into our kind of rapid fire Q&A, if you will, is just to mention that for those who aren't aware, there is the ability for your agency to create master E&O policies that apply to all the producers either in your agency or on a per affiliation basis. This currently exists in the desktop version, but I've gotten a lot of requests recently or questions that indicate that not everyone knows about this. So let's say you've got producers under a certain BD and you create an affiliation for that broker dealer, and they all have a blanket E&O policy that just applies to all of them, rather than requiring them to individually upload or specify that the E&O coverage in each of their profiles. You can create that master E&O policy here and then apply it to all the producers for a specific affiliation or multiple affiliations. And then there's 2 different types here. One is a blanket policy that just covers every producer automatically, and you just upload the certificate to this blanket E&O policy and it covers everybody. Another is a certificate master policy, and the certificate master policy applies the E&O coverage information to their profile as a group policy, but still requires each individual producer to upload their own individual certificate. Those are the kind of 2 different types that the system supports. So just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that.
Mike, we had a couple questions about if agencies are still going to be able to turn off the marketing messages for E&O.
So within the desktop version, you had access to turn those things off. We don't have that UI, we don't have that control in the new version, in the web-based version, but if you want us to turn it off for you, just send an email to support and we'll take care of that for you. We haven't gotten a lot of agencies recently. That was something that a lot of agencies were doing when we first launched that program several years ago. But lately we haven't gotten a lot of requests for that. So again, whatever your settings currently are will still be retained. So if you've already disabled it, it'll be disabled. We're not changing that going forward. But if you want to make changes to that in the future, you just email us at support and we'll take care of it for you. Okay. All right. So Jim, what other questions do we have that we can kind of go through? We're about 15 minutes from the end of our webinar here. So let's see what kind of answers we can provide in that amount of time.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. Do we have a recommended browser?
Oh, great question. So since I will say what we don't support. So Microsoft officially ended support for Internet Explorer a while ago. So we don't support Internet Explorer. I'm showing this in Firefox because we tend to have good experience with Firefox. Chrome, it's supported in Chrome, the latest version of Chrome, but Chrome has become pretty bloated. So we've had the same kinds of issues using Chrome that we have with other sites that use Chrome, where sometimes it gets a little bloated and works a little slow. It's definitely supported there, and we're supported in all the current versions of the major browsers. So there's no one that we recommend, but there are just some caveats to the ones that maybe some of you might still be using that aren't current, or might have some performance issues just in general, but nothing specific to SureLC.
And then if you could reiterate what the impact will be on producers with the links that they're using today.
Oh, yes, great question. So this change is only applying to your agency logins. The producers are not going to see any differences at all. They've been using a web-based version for a couple of years. The links that they use to access SureLC for each of your agencies are all staying the same. We're not changing any of that. SureLC.com is only for agency admins at this time. Down the road, we might make some changes or improvements or streamline some things for producers, but right now, nothing's changing. So if you have producers who are logging in through your website through single sign-on today, that will stay exactly the same. You don't have to change anything there.
And then we had a couple of questions about the effect the new version will have on existing communications that agencies receive today, namely emails, and if there's any impact or changes.
No, if I understand correctly, whatever emails that you're getting from the system today will not be impacted. Those same triggers exist, all the same processes exist for sending emails to your agency based on actions that happen, like a producer registers or submits a contracting request. You'll still get all those same emails. We may be updating some of the look and feel in some of those email templates just so that they're modernized, but we may not get to that. Because we're actually not changing any of that functionality. So it's just this UI that you all are using that's being updated.
And then will customizing the UI have any impact on other agency admins?
Oh, that's a great question. So from the standpoint of like the producers list, where I go in and I change my columns and I remove, let's say, a few of these things, will that change for anybody else? The answer is no. This is your view, and it's saved on a per user basis. So when you come in here again, it will look the same as you left it, but it won't affect anybody else in your agency. They'll have to make their own changes if they want.
And then, Mike, can you show the training tab in the producer profile with regards to now needing to link the certificates to the course?
Yes, great. Let me take a look here. So if I go into, here's my little bug that I discovered recently. Sometimes it logs me out. It's my demo environment. So if I go into the documents screen, and you can see I've got this one here. This is a training document, and it's not linked. So if I click on Fix, I have to put in the training course information. So I'm just going to pick random stuff here. And then once you do that, you go back and it's resolved that issue. Now that one is linked. Now that's specifically the training documents, because I know a number of you have training documents you've uploaded that haven't been linked. These are other examples where in this particular producer account, I've got, certificate here that's an extra one. I've got an extra explanation document that's not linked to a question. Same thing with a voided check. I've just got extras here. So you'll see these things. These are other issues that you need to resolve, but they're resolved differently. So for instance, this E&O certificate is not linked. So when I click Fix, it takes me into E&O to resolve that and add the E&O policy. So it's smart enough to know based on the document type what it's related to, so you can go in and fix it. But in some cases, this is just an extra voided check that's not linked to anything, so that's why that shows up. And the same thing for this explanation document. This is just one that's failing. It's an error document. So I just do a lot of tests. So you see some weird things in my profile. Okay.
And then we had a question about what the impact will be with regards to manually having to save the process contract. Will that have any impact on the emails if you copy your agency?
Oh, okay. No, actually, when you choose to copy your agency, when you send when you process a contracting request, it will still send that email to your agency. The only impact of not being able to automatically save the documents is when you're in a contracting request and you click the process button, regardless of who you chose as a recipient, SureLC automatically would save copies of those documents to your local hard drive, or again, to that network drive that you might have configured in your agency settings. And it would set it up in a folder structure, right? So you'd have the folder structure would be automatically created with the producer name, the carrier, there'd be a whole folder structure automatically created on whatever drive it was saving to. That's the part we can no longer automate. But the emails aren't impacted because those are not considered, saving a file to your local computer. Those still will be sent as they always have been.
And then we had a question about always being able to either include or exclude optional documents within the contract, review process.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that can be done?
So to always include optional documents?
Right, to either include or exclude.
So if you have a specific need to do that, email support, because our forms team sets that up. I think we've got that set up for a number of agencies already. That's just a configurable on a per agency basis. So it's not something that you can configure. That's something our forms team has to set up for you, but they're happy to do it. So just email support. Okay. What else, Jim?
Yeah, sorry guys, I'm just going through the
I
list.
know it's a lot, right?
There's a lot of questions, and some are kind of redundant. So I just want to make sure I could call out a couple more that I think will be helpful.
Yeah, don't forget, folks, we'll send out the chat transcript with any of the questions that we don't get to on this call in the next few minutes. We'll include answers in the chat transcript that we send out.
So in the work inbox, if you choose to use the new assign feature, will agency workers who the contract is assigned to get notified?
They will not. This is a very sort of rudimentary sort of beginning of assigning things. There's no sort of task management or notifications or anything that accompanies this. This is just being able to assign these specific requests in the work inbox. It's just kind of a way to categorize and filter them.
And then how do you add a comment to the contract request?
Oh, that's an awesome question. So let me go into one of these. Oh, sorry, I went to the wrong place. So if I go into change stage, I can add a comment here. I can, change the stage if I want to. I can add a comment. I can set it as an internal note. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is in the actual producer profile, which is, I think, where most people would have done this previously. You go into the producer profile and you go to the contracting requests. Now I can actually expand this notes area. This is available in the contracting requests view in the producer profile, and I can add notes here. And then by default, it will only show the most recent note, but then you'll see that there's more here, so I can hit show more and it shows me all of them. So that's actually the best place. If you just want to add a note, you don't want to change the stage, this is the best place to do that. Great question.
And there are quite a few requests for us to send a copy of the PowerPoint along with the video recording to everyone on the webinar list, and that's something we'll do, guys.
Yep. Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
I think that does a good job covering the majority of the questions that we had. All the additional questions, if they weren't answered, we definitely will in the follow-up.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We are very excited to get this all into your hands, and certainly send us feedback. If you have additional questions after this call that maybe you didn't put in the chat, then send an email to support, and we'll get those answered as quickly as we can. One thing I will mention is that, and I'll put this in the follow-up email that we send out probably tomorrow. That email will go out because we need time to go through and answer all the chat questions. We'll include a link to the new training resources that we have for SureLC.com. That is still being built out. We've got a number of new support articles that have been added there, but there will be more that we add as time goes by. And so we'll include a link to that training section in our support site when we send out the chat transcript and the link to the recording once it's ready. So look for that tomorrow. And with that, we'll say thank you, and hope you all have a great end to your week. And we'll look forward to getting your feedback as we go forward. And everyone have a great weekend.